So let's get started here. Today I am joined with Enzo and FIFO from AHA Labs that are building a protocol called Moonlight, and David from Lumenshade. Typically on Stellar there is no private payments, and these two projects are building solutions to enable privacy on Stellar. And for those that are kind of unaware, we usually like say that crypto is anonymous, but it's not. Everything that you do is trackable and visible on chain. Everyone can see what you have. Everyone can see who you send to, and obviously that raises a lot of problems because typically dealing with cash or your bank accounts, there is more anonymity. So love to hear from each of you guys. If you guys could maybe introduce yourselves and then give a simple 1-minute pitch about your project. Enzo, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. Does it work? Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, hello everyone. I'm Enzo from High Labs, CEO at High Labs, to be precise. So we are currently building Moonlight, which is, make it simple, a solution, as Raf said, to create private payments on Stellar. And just to get you all very excited without going too much into details, because I will spoil all of the discussion, I will just say that we're not like just working with trend words here. We're not building any ZK projects. We're building something else, something bigger, and that's going to be very helpful for the Stellar ecosystem and projects building on top of it. That's all.
FIFO, maybe you want to just introduce yourself and if you have anything to pitch in for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am also from Moonlight. I work with Enzo. I'm FIFO, been in the ecosystem for a long time now. I'm a principal engineer, and Moonlight started basically as a garage project that I was doing on the weekends. And then as it started growing, I was like, oh, this can go somewhere. And then I got along with the AHA team, and we worked together to bring it to the community.
Yeah, I was in Toronto there. You're like, it'd be really cool, privacy on Stellar. And then it was just really cool that now that you're joining AHA and you have a whole team to make this happen. So I think that you're passionate about privacy is now something that you can do for work. David, you want to pitch in? Introduce yourself and give us a simple pitch about Lumenshade.
Yeah. So Lumenshade, we are building a privacy pool. So like a lot of people probably know Tornado Cash. So it allows you to hide where your money is going, basically to get into the pool, mix your funds with a lot of other people, and hide the final destination of your funds. So, and we add some compliance to it because you probably heard that the Tornado Cash founders are went to prison. So we don't want to go to prison. So we add some compliance, a compliance layer to it.
Cool. I like you not in prison, David. So it's good that we're looking at options to make this compliant. So let's get this started with Moonlight. In simple terms, what's the trick that Moonlight uses to make a payment private? How do you hide the details of a transaction?
Okay, I think I can tackle this one. And I think the challenge of bringing the privacy to public blockchains is very big. It's a hard one. So we try to break it down to smaller problems in different areas that we tackle. So I could say that there are three big ones, like what happens on chain versus the middle of the way. So how you are broadcasting these transactions to the blockchain, and a whole big piece that happens off chain as well. So the way we tackle it in simple terms is that on the on-chain part, we provide some building blocks that have a lot of synergy with what Lumenshade is doing, for example, and I think we could definitely find ways of integrating these solutions. So basically having these building blocks so that when you look at data on-chain, you cannot infer balances, you cannot infer what are different accounts, what are different people, how transactions could be related to each other. So we create this obfuscation, and these building blocks could be extended with different techniques. So that's where you could bring someone with a ZK technique, with a privacy tool, or different approaches to enhance on that. On the second layer, we have this broadcasting, which is how we try to create distance from the actual person controlling and holding a key in a non-custodial manner and sending transactions, not authorizing transactions. So I could be FIFO from Solana with a Solana key pair, signing and making payments in Moonlight without ever touching anything Stellar related. So I think that's very powerful. And the third piece, which basically glues everything together comes from the off-chain side, which is how we bring this role of a privacy provider, which could be a wallet, could be a banking institution, it could be a privacy enhancing solution, or even could be just yourself in your close group of friends, acting as the one that combines these techniques and also bridges with the regulation to make sure that all transactions are fully compliant to what the regulation requires in your region. So I think that's the trick, as you said.
Could you maybe go into detail, like just a little bit on how the building blocks work? Like essentially,
Yeah.
how are you enabling that building block to be private?
Yes, absolutely. So once you get into Moonlight, you can think of it as a safe space that you go to transact. So every fund that gets into Moonlight, you can think of it as going into different drawers. So you can think of countless different drawers. Each drawer has one single key that can open this drawer. And as the money comes in, it goes spread into multiple and multiple of these drawers. So 100 USDC could go into 100 different drawers or even fractions. And all of the users coming into Moonlight will have all of their funds spread across these drawers, and they have no direct relationship between each other. So you cannot infer that one account holds 3 or 4 or 5 of these drawers. And when you transact on Moonlight, basically what we do is that we are bringing a bunch of keys, opening some drawers and destroying it in the process, bundling all the money together, doing something fancy that could be any strategy, and then put it into new drawers. And depending on the strategy you can implement, you could be doing fancy mechanisms to how you mix everything together. But the key piece here is that whenever you look on chain, all you see is that a bunch of funds in a bunch of drawers, and you cannot really infer like who is opening those, who controls the keys, and what you're doing in between the transactions.
So you're splitting up what you're sending within a bunch of different transactions, or
You could,
is it one
yes.
transaction, multiple different transactions?
Going into a little bit on the technical side, it's built on top of the UTXO model, if people are familiar with this one. So basically, me as FIFO, instead of holding one Stellar account, I control countless individual addresses that are these drawers that I was saying, and these are single key pairs that can sign for that specific funds to be used, and it can only be used once. And the transactions that go through Moonlight, they're basically a bundle of multiple addresses being used to allocate funds and addresses being created to receive these funds. So basically, when we run a Moonlight transaction, it in reality are multiple bundles of multiple addresses interacting at once. And in the end, the math matches. So there's no money being created or money being disappearing. Everything matches together, but you cannot infer who authorized which directly or who was interacting with which one directly. You just see money moving from these drawers.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think we'll get into the compliance elements in a bit here. But obviously, you guys have mechanisms to show who's the owner of those keys,
Exactly.
or parts of information of what's being sent or what's being held. For David, can you help us understand how Lumenshade works and how it kind of helps keep the sender receiver and the amount secret?
Yeah, definitely. So we operate in a different way. We use zero knowledge proof, and I have to say I disagree with Enzo, who saying that it's a buzzword. I think zero knowledge proofs are really powerful, and but I do agree that there are other ways to tackle the problem. And how we so first of all, what are zero knowledge proofs? They are a way to prove basically anything, any statement you want to prove. For example, like the most simple example usually used is identity. You want to prove your identity, like you want to prove that you are at least 20 years old. You would be able to generate a zero knowledge proof based on your passport, for example. And the output of that, like the actual proof, is just like a small, you can think of it as a small text file that doesn't contain anything about your identity. But when someone receives it, he can verify that you are actually who you say you are without having your name or your age or anything. It's Does it make sense, or was it confusing?
Yeah, I think my understanding is that you have a way of proving something without showing all the information. Is my
Exactly. Yeah.
is your
Yeah.
so how does zero knowledge work within Lumenshade?
Okay.
So what happens behind the scene in Lumenshades here?
Yeah. So Lumenshade is so what we call a privacy pool. Basically, every user who wants to ultimately hide their funds sends money to the privacy pool contract on Stellar, so Soroban. Uh, and when he wants to withdraw, he has to prove that he was the one who deposited the money. And for that, like when you deposit the funds, you generate like a secret number basically. And so just like your private key that you use usually to transact, it's like the equivalent. And when you want to withdraw, you generate a zero knowledge proof that you know that secret number. And then, so again, like remembering what the zero knowledge proof does, it's just a proof that you know the number, but it doesn't reveal the actual number. So then you send the proof to the contract, and the contract checks that the proof is actually valid. So which means you knew a secret number associated with the deposit, and you can withdraw the money. Again, does it make sense?
So like you made the analogy to Tornado Cash, right? So Tornado Cash, you're depositing into a pool and you're withdrawing from a different account.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the same way, but you're kind of being able to prove, uh, like you're proving ownership without tying in your account. What makes it more private than Tornado Cash?
Oh, it doesn't make it more private. It's the same as Tornado Cash.
Okay. Yeah, so
So Tornado Cash works exactly the same way. You have a secret number that you generate when you deposit, and when you withdraw, you prove that you knew that number, but there is no way to link the withdrawal with the deposit. Like we don't know which number you proved, basically.
interesting. So my understanding, kind of to compare both projects, is essentially one, you're kind of hiding, or you're splitting up and hiding within like small groups of different transactions or mechanisms, and then for Lumenshade, I'm understanding you're kind of mixing it in a big pool of different funds, and that's how you're kind of hiding in a big pool. So essentially, it's kind of dependent on how much money is there and who's participating. People, maybe you can get started on like why your type of like crowd, your mechanism is, better to protect someone's privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of calling it a crowd. It's a nice one. So basically, as I was using the example of the drawers, you can think of the funds as being split into multiple addresses. So under the hood, we have a mechanism so that users off-chain, they control one single key. It's fully non-custodial. So let's say I am a Solana user and I have my Solana key pair and I use it to control all my funds on Moonlight. The idea is that we have a standard derivation that generates countless key pairs based on this central key. So basically, whenever I'm transacting, I have to access the funds that are in the different utexos, the different drawers. I am generating those keys and signing individually for each one of those. And when I'm assembling my transaction, let's say I'm sending some money to UREF, I could be using 10 or 15 addresses that I hold to send to another 10 or 15 addresses that you hold, plus 5 or 6 addresses that I hold as well. So even the values and the amount being transacted would be so explicit to people looking into the transaction. And the crowd per se, like it really depends on how you want to apply your strategy. So by default, we operate with bundles and batches. So you could really combine a lot of different addresses and different identities, different people interacting in the same transaction to create a bigger and bigger pool or a bigger mix. And the thing is that once you get into Moonlight, you can think also of it as similar to a pool in which people deposit money and start transacting. So the more you transact within Moonlight, the more these funds are actually spreading through multiple addresses. and it becomes harder and harder for people to infer where they're going or what's the relationship between these different addresses. And what I would expect is that, at least what is our big selling point, I would say, is that everything is flexible. We have this base mechanism that out of the box you can use and enhance privacy and have your own flavor of how many addresses and how you want to create these transactions. But also it is open for being extended for different techniques. So you could also bring ZK, you could also bring strategies like CoinJoin, or have different entities operating just as mixers, like acting over time and bundling more and more transactions in different and clever ways to make it more private, of course, at a cost, at a premium. So I think that what makes it different is that out of the box, you have something that works really well, but you can really ramp up if what you're looking is for enterprise grade privacy.
How does that compare, David, to like a Tornado Cash kind of model?
Okay, that's interesting. So I think there are a lot of similarities, and we would need to go very deep into the technical aspects. You can think of it in the similar way as money coming into this pool, and within this pool, we're trying to obfuscate who is holding and where it's flowing, and at a certain point, it can leave in the end. But ideally, what we envision for Moonlight is that you stay in the pool and you transact through the pool. And through the pool, you can also engage with people from outside of the pool, people that you can engage with DeFi applications, you can engage with different accounts, and you have like an ecosystem arising of providers bridging this interoperability. And I think where it's different mainly is when we bring the off-chain aspect of me using these different types of accounts. So it could be, in essence, a user from a different ecosystem interacting, and the entity that operates as the privacy provider being the ones ensuring that the regulation is on par. We can go deeper into these details, but the important piece is that I choose who is my privacy provider and I engage with this entity. And this entity will ensure that the data behind the transaction is not public, but is at least auditable and compliant to what the regulation is requiring. And me as a non-custodial controller of the accounts, I can at any moment choose to go to a different provider, or even in parallel. I could be operating with multiple providers in parallel and create these different relationships to diversify.
Interesting. So I see something similar to what we have right now in the financial system with banks and stuff, where you have a service provider that you're using, and that person knows information about you, and that's the person that you're trusting with that information.
Exactly, but much more limited and without giving away the control over your funds and your accounts.
For David here for Lumenshade, what makes your approach like better and more private?
I don't know if it's better. Like, I think we have different approaches, and both are good, and we just have to experiment with it, like keep going with it, and we'll see which one in the long run will end up like being the most used, I would say. But both approaches are, in my opinion, are good. Like, we use this kind of centralized approach, and Moonlight uses this spreads out the funds basically between a lot of different addresses, like those one-time addresses. The thing about Lumenshade, or like the Tornado Cash model, that is maybe a bit more complicated, is the fact that you need a lot of people to use it to have privacy. Like, the more people use it, the better the privacy. And if no one uses it, then it's pretty useless. So we have like also a lot of work to do to bring people in and make them understand how it works and that it's safe. And yeah, like if I remember correctly, just to give a number, like on Ethereum, Tornado Cash has like $600 million dollars on it. So this brings like a big there is a, like, that's what we call like the anonymity set is like pretty big. On Stellar, we will see we will see, I guess, how much we can get.
That's interesting. Yeah, because if there's not enough liquidity within that pool on Stellar, then like it will offer challenges for that privacy element. Yeah, very interesting. But at the same time, I do think that Lumenshade has different advantages. I think it's going to really be based on the user experience or the developer tooling that's available for institutions to kind of plug in, um, to kind of see which model really takes in, because one is kind of like I think it's like there's small amount of interactions to make happen, and that's how I see Lumenshade. Essentially, you're like only having 2 or 3 actions to interact with this pool, and withdraw it. While on the U2XO model, you have many different things that are happening in the background to.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I do agree. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're
Just
good.
to say, I do agree with that. I think the Lumenshade model is simpler, but in the end, like for the user, I don't think it changes. I mean, people can say what he thinks about it, but if they make their front end like easy to how do you say, to like mix together all the UTXO basically, like for the user it should be pretty easy in the end. Where it could get complicated, in my opinion, again, like it's from a compliance point of view. Like for us it's pretty easy. Basically you have one pool and a few transfer like deposits and withdraw, and you can, if you need to get audited, you can just show that easily. For Moonlight it could get really complicated if you end up having hundreds of addresses.
Mhm. And I also think and maybe FIFO and maybe Enzo, you want to touch on this, but the onboarding of privacy providers, I think it's you essentially need to onboard them, or do you need to educate them on how to use the tools and how it works, for them to know the compliance or be able to report the compliance?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things to say on like everything that you both shared. I just want to say that like I strongly believe that Lumen Shade and Moonlight can be like they can be complementary solutions. We can imagine a world in which like Lumen Shade is being used in the middle of like some of our privacy channels. But also I believe that the target isn't necessarily the same. I mean, you just mentioned it, like we need to onboard privacy providers that already have like users. Um, I don't think it's very complicated to onboard these privacy providers because like, and we'll talk about users at some point, I know, but like, we can onboard institutions as a privacy provider, but we can also onboard a wallet as a privacy provider. We can onboard a payment provider. Like there are a lot of like different stakeholders that can become privacy providers, and then like for all of the settings on how to set the compliance, it's primarily led by the regulation itself. So like depending on the local regulation or like the rules that they want to put in their like quorum of privacy providers, they can decide the rules, but it's not that complicated really. And then all of the process of being able to untangle, unwind the transactions for like audits and stuff are tools that we are going to make available for the privacy providers so that they can be compliant with their regulations.
Interesting. And it's interesting because I don't see, and maybe you want to touch on this, I don't see banks wanting to mix their funds with other people.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really
Even
fair
if you
point.
withdraw, sorry, go for it.
No, that's a very fair point, which is why I started like pushing the idea of like quorums of privacy providers because yes, like banks may not be interested in mixing like funds with other like random entities, but what they could do instead is that they could decide to create privacy like groups of privacy providers where only banks, right? Which are only banks. So like you could imagine a group of like having, I don't know, like BNP, Societe Generale, Citibank, JP Morgan. They're all like part of the same quorum, and they decide to be together, but they decide also not to accept any other privacy provider. And that makes it way easier because these banks, they already collaborate together. For example, if you send money abroad or like, let's take it the other way around. If someone sends money to the US, usually you have an intermediary bank that will like get the money in the middle. Like that's the same kind of relationship. So, and we've actually already been discussing with some actors to like push that to institutions, and like we're actually looking into how to draft the contracts on how to make these banks work together within their own quorum of privacy providers. Sorry, I went a bit beyond your question, but like give you a
No, it's good. It's very good. I went to a presentation from there was the guy from Drex there, the CBDC project from Brazil, and he was talking about how like privacy is important um, for many different reasons, especially from the CBDC mindset. But there's a lot of problems to solve that you can't really necessarily solve with ZK or like any like. There's not a single solution that's going to solve them, and like a lot of them is like preventing collusion between banks and enabling that it is like a competitive market between banks. So even like being able to monitor like the amount of volume that's coming out of their bank or how much money they're moving is things that banks can use to their advantage. So like it's very interesting looking at different mechanisms that might be able to solve different portions, and banks can kind of choose to kind of collaborate if they want to, but at the same time using mechanisms to prevent nefarious actions from institutions. So that's the CBDC stuff is very interesting because like I understand the reason for it, but at the same time it has a lot of privacy problems. So kind of moving on here, and that's kind of like the next question is about. It's specifically about privacy providers. Like, what stops a privacy provider from like spying on you and then choosing to block transactions or censor your payments if they don't agree?
Yeah. So the first thing, and FIFA mentioned it. So users going through these privacy channels, they maintain the custody of their assets. So you maintain control over your assets. So at the end of the day, the only thing that a privacy provider can do is decide not to do business with you. So you would not be able to send transactions through them, but they cannot block anything. So worst case scenario is if one privacy provider does not want you to work with them, then you just decide to change privacy provider, which is the magic of all of this, is that you can decide to change from one privacy provider to another. Then the question of spying, well, at the end of the day, like the compliance topic brings a lot of things on the table. So yes, the privacy provider should be able to know what a sender is doing. So because that's the way they can unwind transactions and like have a better visibility of what's happening. But they are not able to know who's the recipient, for instance. So they will be able to know that yes, FIFO is sending money to someone, it's been like moving that much money around, doing that many transactions, but we won't be able to know like with whom they've done that, except if another privacy providers from the same quorum decides that, hey, what about I share my information with these other privacy providers? But at the end of the day, like since you are the one, the user that decide with which privacy provider you interact, then you decide with whom you share your information. And also something that would be like a good practice to have is that you can decide to have different privacy providers, and you can also decide that you do certain types of transactions with certain privacy providers so that you actually like decide to like yeah, just like not finding the word, but like just to do like one type of transaction with someone, another type with someone else, so that it segregates the activity between the privacy providers. So at the end of the day, you only give some information to one and others to another privacy provider.
So just so I understand correctly,
Yeah.
you can choose your privacy provider. So if one is blocking payments, you can kind of switch to another. Is there ways, and then like if I share my information with a privacy provider, that person can share it to somebody else. Can they see my information without me consenting to that privacy provider sending information to another one? Like, am I protected? Like, will that other privacy provider see all my information from the information that's provided from one to the other? Like, or am I like, is it an opt-in to what I share with the different one, or essentially when the privacy provider shares that information, it's like all the information?
Yeah, I believe that's something we've discussed, and you could decide to choose which kind of information you want to share. But it also depends again on the privacy on the compliance components, because if the like the privacy provider you're interacting with requires certain like information per the local regulation, then like you have to like accept that when you interact with them. It's like an obligation. But then, of course, you could decide that, like, yes, there is some other type of information that you don't want to share.
If I can add to this, maybe I can add a piece of information which I think is lacking here, because probably we didn't get it into the first description. But one important piece is that when you look at Moonlight, it's not just like one single pool or one single ecosystem. The idea is to have multiple of what we call channels. And a channel, in essence, is basically like the safe place where you go to transact. So you could have a channel that only operates with USDC, another one that operates with USC, and so on, but you could also have different rules. And some of these channels could be more open for non-providers from the ecosystem that could be wallets, and some could be more tightly controlled with, for example, as Enzo was saying, like with a quorum of big banks in Europe that only allow European citizens to operate. So of course, when you're making that choice, like I'm going to use a channel that belongs to the European banks, of course, this is going to be more tightly controlled. So probably they have their own KYC in place to engage with me and require different data. Probably they are much more communicative with their partners. While if I go to different pools, I might have like a player that I trust more with less information or different ecosystem. And the freedom of the user is within the chosen channel. So within that channel, let's say it's a closed channel with just European banks, I can choose which one I want to interact with, but of course I'll be limited to only the banks that operate in that channel. But if I go to an open channel, maybe I'll be able to either spin up my own provider and be my own provider, like you do with nodes and Bitcoin, for example, or just trust different partners that I know are not sharing the information with other institutions. So it's all about also exercising this choice in the end and seeing where do you want to operate as an end user.
Interesting. For David here, like, so Lumenshade from what I understand, you don't the only people that you're really trusting are other people that are in the liquidity pools. So like what's to prevent a user from like having their funds tainted by having it in the same pool as someone who's nefarious? So so let's say I like put money into a pool and then I try to withdraw to Coinbase. Like, is there, is it problematic that Coinbase sees that it's coming from like a Tornado Cash address or to like a Tornado equivalent system?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, okay, first of all, you don't trust anyone. You only trust the tech itself, the zero knowledge technology, which is hopefully safe now. And that's also like what I was saying, the Tornado Cash contracts has $600 million on it. Like, if the tech underneath wasn't safe, we can assume that it would have been hacked by now, but you never know. But like, your question is more like you mix your funds with a lot of actors, so you don't know if some bad actors are in it. Like in the case of Tornado Cash, yeah, that's the case. Like you mix in with everybody, so when you get out, it could be anyone. With Lumenshade, that's why I was saying like we add some compliance to it. We will try our best to block the illegal funds. So if your funds are coming from a hack or coming from, if you are a bad actor, basically, we'll try to block you. And we are thinking of ways like we can make that as good as possible and maybe decentralize the process and allow like anybody to flag a deposit maybe. And if your deposit was flagged, then it's just not going to be accepted. Like when you deposit, basically there is like a period of time where your funds are not actually into the pool and they need to be accepted first. And once they are accepted, then you are in the middle of everybody and then you can do anything with it. But so our goal is to make sure that no bad actor comes in, basically.
So there's like a kind of you're looking into possibly putting a reporting mechanism in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because like at a certain point you don't want to be that gatekeeper or have to manage. Because I do think that's like a long-term support model that like you need to maintain as a central entity. I know that Tornado Cash had their UI blocked for a while, and that was kind of the mechanism that that people were using to kind of block use of Tornado Cash. But you're telling me that if they would, like, if somebody wanted to regulate Lumenshade, or sorry, they wanted to block Lumenshade, um, the best way to do that would actually be working with Lumenshade instead of just blocking the UI.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you come back to the Tornado Cache, what you just said, like about the fact that the UI was blocked, like it doesn't matter actually. Like it's the UI is just like an easier way for a user to deposit and withdraw, like a nice looking way, basically. But since the contracts are on Ethereum and everything is decentralized, you can just withdraw yourself or do it straight from the contract, basically. Their UI is just like a nicer way to do it. So there is no way to actually block the thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I find it's very interesting looking at the kind of compliance element and like trying to figure out ways so that it's still kosher, that people like feel that the the privacy is to enable things and not to be nefarious. Like, is this something that you guys think is like important for institutions or important for users? Is this both? Like, why is privacy so important in crypto? Like, it's interesting because like just a couple of years ago, you tried to buy a privacy coin on any exchange and they were all blocked. So, but you know, maybe as a North American, maybe my what I'm using a privacy coin is maybe different than somebody else in the world. I don't know. Like, who do you guys see as the user of these privacy coins, or sorry, these privacy systems?
Yeah, I'm just
I
gonna.
think,
Oh,
yeah, go for it.
okay, I'm just gonna jump in on this one. Well, first the privacy coins, and like before diving into Moonlight, I did some research on that. It's very obvious to me that the reason why they were removed from all exchanges is because there was no like way to trace back like activity, and that's a problem for a lot of like organization. Like banks are never gonna use them for that reason, and users are gonna be in trouble when they want to like off ramp because they don't have traceability on like what happened with their funds, where they're coming from. Does it come from drugs? Like basic activity, we don't know. But at the end of the day, I think the privacy piece is very relevant for all of us. Simply because right now there is like we see something happening in the market where a lot of companies are raising money to be able to let people use stable coins in their daily lives. I was in San Francisco recently. There are a lot of coffee shops where you can buy coffee with USDC, etc. But the problem is, if you buy coffee with USDC, the coffee shop as a wallet. You send them money from your wallet to their wallet. So now there is a direct link made between who you are and who they are. And so like if they pay attention to who you actually are, then they can know, oh, okay, this guy paid 10 USDC for something, but he actually has $1 million USDC. And you're like, oh, well, next time I see him, I may be less gentle, you know. And we can go even further, where people actually have a lot of money and are known. If Vitalik may have a lot of like wallets, if he goes and buy a coffee, and we know that this coffee shop has this wallet, and it's well known because why not? Right now we have a lot of like tools like Arcam to track things like that, and we could be like, oh, so Vitalik is currently in San Francisco buying a coffee in this specific coffee shop, and that becomes a problem. So that's why we need privacy. Like that's something we're not used to. We're not used to seeing all of our payments being visible to like everyone because of the centralized approach that banks have right now. But if banks or like payments are to move on blockchain, then we need to bring this privacy back, but it needs to be compliant. Otherwise, it will end up like privacy coins, meaning being banned or not accepted as a standard.
Fluffy Pony, one of the main devs of Monero, had a big debate with his wife about if he should continue developing for Monero, and it was like essentially like, I'm enabling sex trafficking and weapons and like drugs and all this other stuff. But like the reason why he chose to continue was because like, and this is where I find it really aligns with Stellar's vision, is like you talk about like being able to not be tracked at a coffee shop. Like essentially there's countries around the world where like if you want to have payment infrastructure and you want people to go buy and go participate in the financial markets, if they are tracked and if their government can choose when their money is valid and not, then it's pretty big limit, like it's pretty big, to limit to how someone can participate, whether it's like by other people watching or governments watching. So yeah, it's very interesting as like why privacy solutions are important. FIFO or David, you want to pitch in on that one?
Yeah. So yeah, I completely believe that privacy is really important, and I think we should all agree. Like a lot of people think that privacy doesn't matter too much, and that the thing, like if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about it. Right? But the problem also is that like what we've seen lately also is like in Europe there is a lot of attacks on privacy. Like I don't know. It would take it would be like a whole other discussion like to talk about all the privacy things, but just giving an example, like all the chat control laws that they want to have in Europe, and monitor all the messages that you're transmitting and everything. The problem with that is that it starts with good intentions, like they want to catch criminals and they want to stop child sex trafficking and everything, and it's obviously like everybody should be in with that. But the issue is that in the end, criminals are going to find other ways to communicate, and the people who are going to be controlled kind of and monitored are going to be like regular users. And with money and with what we are doing right now on chain, it's the same thing. Like everybody is going to start, like if we ban privacy, basically, everybody is going to keep transacting like in public. And just like Enzo was saying, then you want to just pay for your coffee and everybody can see everything you've been doing. And the criminals are just going to find other way to hide their money and to be more sneaky, and they are just going to be more sneaky. So what you were asking at first, like who is going to win and who is it for? It's just for regular users, for everybody. And criminals might take advantage of it, but like we'll find other ways to catch them, kind of.
FIFO, if you, I don't know, maybe you have a different perspective from someone from Latin America.
I think both said really well. Like coming from Brazil, like I definitely treasure my privacy, especially when sometimes you have low trust on the government and other institutions. I think that the important key is adding to what they said is on the criminal side. Like we all want to find ways of having our privacy as long as we don't engage with criminal activity. We don't want to be engaged with that. So I think our challenges here is how we provide these infrastructures and these solutions in which users can regain their privacy without giving away control, without giving away their freedom, and at the same time being sure that they are being protected, they are not being involved with malicious people in the process. So I think that's the holy grail we're trying to achieve.
I'm just going to mention quickly that if somebody wants to pitch in and has any questions or comments that they'd like to talk about privacy, the stage is open. I'll start approving some speakers. I see Enrique's in the crowd. I know Enrique has a lot of thoughts about privacy, so if you want to jump in, man, love to have you. But yeah, I just I do see privacy being very important for users. But then we've talked about, I would say a large portion of what we talked about earlier is like compliance for institutions. So if you guys do you see this being more, like you said, it's going to be used by users, but is the play for privacy to become normal on Stellar like an institutional play? Like, is it like essentially we need to cater to institutions to make sure that privacy is being enabled on Stellar? Sorry, I can open this up to anyone. Anybody can jump in here if you want.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely say that yes, I think so. A lot of what inspired us to look into building a solution or trying to find a way came from feedback from big institutions. So, for example, you mentioned Drex, things that inspired me came from discussions with the team behind Drex. I participated in some of these calls in the past, and they would say, hey, blockchain is awesome, but for banks, for these institutions, it's hard to run their operations. Sometimes they don't want to expose their user data because the user trusts them. But also for other entities, like for example, a business that have their own supply chain, they don't want to expose like who they're doing business with, what are the deals they have, what are their strategies, what is their operation, because this could be used in a malicious way to attack that company or to create counter strategies. So I think institutions, they really, really treasure also the privacy they have on their businesses. And the hard part is that when you talk at that scale, it means that the problem is much bigger. It's that there's a lot more moving parts that you need to solve and make sure that are well integrated. So I think that definitely institutions are going to look into that, and I think that this could be the norm if we can come up with ways of making it easier to tackle this problem.
David, any thoughts about that? Institutions versus users?
I don't think we are made for institutions. the I mean, the Lumenshade, the privacy pool model is, I don't think is that attractive to institutions. I think it's more like a user model, I would say. I don't know if I have
No, that's
much
good.
more to add.
No, it's good. It means that you're focusing on different people in the ecosystem or different players in the ecosystem. So it's good that we have different solutions for different individuals, and people can kind of choose what they want to work with. So I think it's nice that there's options. For the we kind of answered the last couple of questions, so I won't kind of duck into them. I think we'll just close maybe with on what is your ultimate dream for privacy on Stellar within the next 5 years? What do you want to see happen with privacy on Stellar? Open to anyone.
Okay, I'll jump into this one. I think, as you were saying, like it's good to have diverse solutions, and I really treasure that. I think there's no genius with a bulletproof solution. Everyone's going to use it. It's going to magical over the time, because I think that even a good tech today might be a bad tech in the future. New technology can come up, new techniques can come up that can invalidate your strategies. So I personally believe that the more we have different solutions tackling the problems from multiple angles, the better for us, because this means that it's harder for malicious people to create counter strategies. You have a versatile ecosystem that you can tap from, and if something happens, you can move to the other solutions. So the only caveat I would bring here as my dream goal is to have a diverse ecosystem of solutions, but that are also interoperable. So that have solutions that are complementary. Like for example, if you have Moonlight and Lumenshade working together to tackle like from different angles these problems, and let our strengths collaborate together. And in the same way, have other solutions coming up in the ecosystem and also integrating as well, so that users retain the control and the freedom to choose and move around. So that's what I would love to have as a user looking into this ecosystem.
I completely agree with that. I would say the same thing. I would add also, like I've seen that lately there are a few companies that are trying to bring card payments to Stellar, like where you can directly spend uh, from your wallet, which is awesome. And so ideally, that would be amazing to have that card payment private, and like have a privacy solution where you can uh, directly spend your money anywhere and no one knows it was you or what you were doing. So that would be ideal, like off ramp, basically private off ramp. And who
Yeah,
wins? Like in the end, we were asking. I think all the users are. When you add privacy, everybody is winning. Like the users, and in the end, Stellar is going to win.
I completely agree. I think this is great. I've noticed the same trend of projects doing that, like enabling people to pay with their wallets, and even going beyond. I've seen, and that's like to answer your question, Raf. I've seen projects actually doing great stuff where they manage to like aggregate all chains, because the problem is if you go to the coffee shop that I mentioned before, maybe they only accept USDC in like on base, but they don't accept USDC on Stellar. And I've seen this trend of project enabling people to pay with their wallets, but also like pay with their wallets, whatever the chain is. And it means that like you could use your USDC on Stellar to pay for this USDC on Base, and it works. I've tried it; it's amazing. But what I'm leading to is the trend that I would love to see in the future, and what I would love the ecosystem to aim for is that Stellar is very oriented for payments, and for the privacy part, some of these solutions that enable people to make easier payments are actually very interested in using Stellar to settle all of their like private payments, because of like the fact that the fees are cheap, the fact that we can have solutions like Moonlight and Lumenshade. And so I hope that in the future Stellar could be not just the blockchain for payments, but also the blockchain for private payments, no matter the chain people are trying to settling on.
We really need like a privacy consortium on Stellar. Like, I don't think people really understand. You guys are both teams here are building different products, competing products, and they're all kind of pushing towards the same mind goal. Sorry, the same goal that, let's solve privacy and let's make sure that people have these options that are private. Like for a long time as a user, I'm scared to use privacy tools. That's like my problem. I want to use privacy, but I'm scared to use it. So like it is very we're very fortunate on Stellar to have different ecosystem teams that are looking to work and grow together. And I think that's something that we could really foster with privacy. So I can't say how thankful I am to have you guys all here on the stage with me. I think seeing FIFO with AHA Labs with Enzo and David, who we spent a lot more time with this year through the different conferences. I'm just seeing like a growth mindset build on Stellar, especially around like topics that are incredibly important if we're going to see the network being successful. So just a big thank you to you all to being here, and I think most of you guys will be in Rio. But if you are, looking to see you, and if not, it was a pleasure having you in this conversation. So looking forward to keep going with it. Final thoughts? I don't see anybody requesting to speak, so we can close off if there's nothing else.
Thank you very much. That was fun.
Thanks. Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.